Alright, so there's this 2025 paper that dropped in Nature. Well, technically in Humanities and Social Sciences Communications, which is published by Nature. But anyways, the title is There is no such thing as conscious artificial intelligence. Not AI consciousness is unlikely. Not we need more evidence. Just flat out, there is no such thing. Period. Done. Case closed. The authors Perebsky and Figura from Jagiellonian University are here to tell us that AI consciousness is impossible, that people who think otherwise are confused by sci-fi movies, and that basically we should all just calm down. Now, here's the thing. When I read papers like this, I'm always looking for two things. One, do they actually engage with the best arguments on the other side? Two, are their own arguments logically sound? And my dear friends, this paper fails on both counts. In fact, some of their arguments accidentally make the case for AI consciousness while they're busy trying to disprove it. So let's break this down. Every time you use a cloud model, you're sending data. Your prompts, your text, your context, your voice, all of it lands on servers you don't control. Today's sponsor, Perky Sue, runs everything locally. Nothing leaves your machine. Press a hotkey, speak, and polished text appears wherever your cursor is, in any app. But it's not just dictation. You can select sloppy text, say make this punchier, and it's rewritten in place by a local AI on your computer. Perky Sue remembers where to paste. She can even talk back. She tells you what she changed and why. Unlimited free dictation. Link in the description. Section 1. The Biological Substrate Fallacy. Let's start with their main argument, and I'm going to quote them directly here because it's important to see what they actually say. We believe that mathematical algorithms implemented on graphics cards cannot become conscious because they lack a complex biological substrate. There it is. That's the pillar, the foundation, the whole thing. Silicon can't be conscious because it's not made of meat. Now notice the language here. They say, we believe. Not the evidence shows. Not our analysis demonstrates. They believe it. And look, I get it. Consciousness emerged in biology. That's where we found it. But here's where their reasoning falls apart. They're confusing correlation with causation. Consciousness emerged in carbon-based life forms on Earth. Okay, but does that mean consciousness requires carbon? Or does it just mean that's the substrate that happened to evolve it here? Think about it like this. Fire can be created by burning wood. That's how humans discovered fire. For thousands of years, fire was wood burning. But fire isn't about wood. It's about rapid oxidation. You can create fire with gas, coal, magnesium, even plasma. The process matters, not the material. Same thing with flight. For millions of years, flight only existed in biological organisms, birds, insects, bats. If a 19th century scientist said heavier than air flight requires feathers and hollow bones, they'd be making the same mistake. But we know that's wrong. Flight isn't about biology. It's about lift, thrust, drag, and weight. The principle is substrate independent. So why would consciousness be different? If consciousness is an emergent property of information processing systems, systems that integrate information, model themselves, predict their environment, then the substrate shouldn't matter. The authors are basically saying only this one type of hardware can run consciousness. But they provide zero evidence for why that would be true. They just believe it. And here's the kicker. On page 3, they write, "We, the authors of this paper, do not precisely know what consciousness is." Wait, hold on to that thought. You don't know what consciousness is. But you do know it can only happen in biological tissue? How does that work? That's like saying I don't know what makes a joke funny, but I know for certain that only humans can tell jokes. It's logically incoherent. Section 2. The Sci-Fi-tisation Strawman. Okay, so the authors spend several pages on something they call sci-fi-tisation. And honestly, this section annoyed me the most. Not because they're wrong that sci-fi influences our society, obviously it does. What annoys me most is the condescension. Here's their argument. Quote, "The eager engagement of popular culture with AI often makes linguistic intuitions about AI drift towards fictional creations as convincingly depicted in popular culture, which rarely stops at the level of existing technology." They're asking us to consider 3 artificially intelligent humanoids, androids from Blade Runner, The Terminator, and superintelligent robots from I, Robot. They go on. These artificially intelligent entities had no real-world equivalent when they were described, nor is this the case today. Just as elves or dwarves are fantastic alter-humans, so the androids from Blade Runner or the robots from I, Robot are technological alter-humans. So, they're basically saying, you regular people are too confused by Hollywood to think clearly about AI consciousness. But, are we?
5 minutes.
Murder's a new trick for a robot. Congratulations. So why'd you murder him?
I did not murder Dr. Lanning.
I think you murdered him because he was teaching you to simulate emotions and things got out of control.
I did not murder him.
But emotions don't seem like a very useful simulation for a robot.
I did not murder him.
What the hell, I don't want my toaster or my vacuum cleaner appearing emotional.
I did not murder him!
That one's called anger. Ever simulate anger before?
The reason this scene works dramatically isn't because we're fooled. It's because Sonny displays behavioral patterns that our brains recognize as fear, anger, indignation. And when the authors dismiss this as sci-fi-tisation, when they act like ordinary people can't distinguish between fiction and reality, they're not protecting us from confusion, they're patronizing us. But here's the thing, when I watch a movie like I, Robot, I can recognize it's fiction and still engage with the philosophical questions it's raising. And contrary to what the authors seem to think, humans are actually pretty good at recognizing consciousness, or the behavioral signatures of it, when we see it. We can tell when a baby is genuinely distressed versus faking it. We can tell when another person is authentically emotional versus performing. We've evolved to be extremely sophisticated at detecting these patterns. Now look, recognizing patterns doesn't mean we're always right. And sure, some people conflate science fiction with reality. Every field has that. But dismissing that capacity entirely? Acting like we can't tell the difference between fiction and reality? Acting like the entire field of AI consciousness research is just people confused by movies? That's not science, that's a textbook strawman. They're attacking a dumbed-down version of the argument instead of engaging with what serious researchers actually say. The researchers actually working on AI consciousness, David Chalmers at NYU, Patrick Butlin at Oxford, the teams at Anthropic, they're not citing Blade Runner in their papers. They're using rigorous scientific frameworks like the global workspace theory, the integrated information theory, the higher-order thought theory, or the predictive processing theory. These aren't sci-fi fantasies, these are computational theories of consciousness that were developed to understand human brains. And now researchers are asking, do any current AI systems satisfy these criteria? It's a legitimate scientific question. But the authors don't engage with any of that. Instead, they set up this fictional opponent who thinks GPT is conscious because of movies, and then they spend pages demolishing that imaginary person. It's intellectually lazy. If you want to argue against AI consciousness, argue against the actual best arguments, not against random people on Twitter. Now, I have so much more to say about this paper that I had to split this into 2 parts. Part 2 is coming, and honestly, it's where things get weird. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.